Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of our Blind Spot series where we're watching movies from the past we haven't seen and we're filling in those blind spots. And today we are getting out our tissues. We're talking about the romantic weepy, one of the most successful movies of all time. I had no idea. We're talking about Love Story from 1970. Can you believe it?
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, Manda is here to talk about this movie with me. And this is very interesting. In general, where would you say you lie on like a romantic weepy? Are you like a Nicholas Sparks person? Or you normally not like him? Where are you at on that?
The only one that I can excuse is The Notebook. That is the only one that I'd be like, I love it. But anything to do with romance and an illness, I cannot get behind. I have no idea why. Like, I think it's, when it's done with the intent of like, we have to make you cry and you feel that from the script. I think it's just not authentic when it comes to a love story. Whereas obviously The Notebook is completely different, but it ruins the experience for me. So I'm not on that side of it, but like a romantic drama like Past Lives, I'm all for because it's very realistic to me. But when it comes to illnesses and romance, I'm just not.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who I think maybe because the Hallmark Hall of Fame were pretty melodramatic for a long time. Those were the ones on the network TV. A lot of people think Hallmark movies are like that. They think they're like Nicholas Sparks and kind of thing. And it's like, no, they're not. Like every once in a while they'll dip into drama and they'll try that. But for the most part, they're the rom-coms.
Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah, they're the rom-coms, not that
they're uplifting and happy.
And that's what I'm team rom-com, not team emotional romance. There are a few exceptions. I mean, like as with anything can be done well, anything can be done trash. And I think that the thing with The Notebook is that they're so well cast. They have such great chemistry that you're able to forgive the fact that they're total narcissists and jerks.
Yeah, it's true. They're like, as much as they're not likable, they're still likable because of who they are. They're so incredibly charming, right? So I think that's why it definitely works.
They have such good chemistry together.
They're so good. Like,
and I'm dying to see the new, there's a new Broadway musical for The Notebook.
No way.
Yeah, just opened this month. And it has songs by Ingrid Michaelson, who I love and adore. And so I really want to see that.
Oh my God. I'm so excited for you. That's amazing. I didn't know that was coming out.
I mean, who knows if I'll ever get to see it. but I would like to. I do like A Walk to Remember. That is the one of those gets cancer ones that I think works pretty well. And maybe because it's a musical that helps because I love musicals.
Yeah, I tried with that one. You
didn't like it.
I could not do it. And I remember like all my friends in high school, they're like, this is the best romance movie. I'm like, guys, I just can't watch it. I'm sorry. Watch it.
Well, the big unpopular opinion, one of the first unpopular opinions that I had as a critic was that I kind of hated A Fault in Our Stars. It was not for me at all. And I found it so like irritating, and the way that it tried to manipulate you and get you to cry. And I mean, they do have pretty good chemistry. There's good performances. I'll give it that. But I hated that story. It was not for me.
I feel like because I read the book and it was just like such a phenomenon when I feel like I was in high school when that came out. Like it was a different experience, I think, because of my age when I was reading it as like a YA like novel. But I can totally see why people, like, if they were like older when that came out, it hits differently. And watching it back as as I'm older in my 20s, like they did manipulate audiences, and that's why it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth afterwards.
Yeah, it felt so inauthentic to me that this writer would treat these people this way. Like, what is he like a super villain? Because I can't imagine any human being treating kids with cancer like that.
Yeah.
And even if he felt that way, like a writer's reputation these days is so based on the slightest little thing, and your book sales are so impacted by your reputation and who you are. There's no way that he would say something like that and do something like that. You would have to be a complete idiot and a monster, which he is. And it just feels inauthentic to me. And then also they're like making out in Frank's house, which is just weird. I just hate that movie.
I mean, I like when it got to that point, I'm like, are they actually they're gonna show it? And they did. And I was like, okay, we went there. Like, you could have just taken that part out.
When that came out, I wrote a scathing review. I probably wouldn't be quite so scathing now, but at the time, and people were upset. We were really upset.
Like, how dare you say this about a romance? Like, what are you talking about?
I hated it.
Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night, or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
But we're talking about love story, and it is hard to overemphasize how big of a hit this thing was. Oh my gosh.
It's insane.
It cost $2.2 million to make in 1970.
Wow.
And it made $173.4 million in 1970.
Man. It's because the score, the soundtrack just sold, man. If I, honest to God, Rachel, not that I want to already jump into it, but if I heard that thing one more time in that movie, I was like, I'm ready to pause this thing. I can't listen to how sad this score is. Like, I can't. And it would come in every single time something bad was about to happen. You just heard it. And I'm like, oh, geez. It's like, okay. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it.
Yeah, it was. It won best score at the Oscars.
I don't blame them. I get it. It's just I didn't expect it to be played that much, because it's the same like 5 notes the whole time. Like, they don't go past that. It's great. It's powerful, but oh my God.
It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Actress, Supporting Actors, Best Story and Screenplay, based on factual material or material not previously published.
Oh, it's how
or produced. That's a random category. And original score, and that is the one that won is the original score.
Got nominated for too much, if you ask me. Thank God Patton won that year, or else I would have been very upset if this took home anything else. Oh my God.
Well, the thing, part of the problem with this movie, I do think that they had nice chemistry. I liked these two actors together. You don't think that? No.
I feel so bad. I personally think between the two of them, Ryan O'Neal acted circles around Ally McGraw. I didn't cry, which is a spoiler, like us talking about it, but I didn't feel anything, to be honest. I had no emotional connection to them, but he pulled me in. Like, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have made it through this movie. Like, I thought he was fantastic, and he deserved that nomination out of like the two of them.
Well, you can see why he's the one that like took off. It's kind of similar in we did an episode of Hallmarkies podcast on Footloose a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, you can see why Kevin Bacon was the one over whoever the other girl was, I forget. Because he's definitely the stronger one. But I thought that if this had been a rom-com and the two of them together, I would have been fine with it. They were like, to me, cute together.
I think that was the issue for me, because their banter was great. I was kind of shocked with the way they spoke to each other too sometimes, because there were like some pretty harsh words exchanged. Like, he did call her like the B word nonchalant, and I'm just like, she's just calling you a preppy, my guy. Like, why are you calling her that? Like, it didn't make sense, the exchange of words in certain arguments. So that kind of bothered me. But their banter was really strong. And if it wasn't like they took the film so seriously and it wasn't a drama, I would have believed their romance more so if it was a comedy than the drama for whatever reason. I think the banter worked better in for comedic purposes because the way they were saying things to each other in a serious manner, like it didn't sit right with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The sort of the more fun. Well, and what was so weird about this movie is that like this was the least sick I've ever seen anybody get cancer in a movie. Like she didn't lose her hair. She didn't look sick at all. I'm like, she's about to die.
But it was also like 2 seconds. And I'm like, like I don't think that it is cancer because I literally Googled it afterwards. You know that someone actually questioned, they're like, what was her illness in this movie? Nobody knew.
Well,
because they didn't drop it like the term, you know what I mean? Like they didn't even talk about it, I guess because it was the 70s. They didn't really have like
well, and it's so weird because they tell him about her diagnosis before they tell her, which would be illegal now. You can't, because of HEPA laws, you cannot, even a spouse, unless somebody has a conservatorship or or is a guardian of some way, you cannot tell somebody else's health information to another human. It does not matter if they're married, if they're you can't do it. It's illegal.
It was weird. It was so
lose your medical license.
Exactly. And it's like you told him before you told her.
It was so weird.
I was like, the day doing? I was like, you guys dramatized this for reasons, obviously, because then he had to keep it a secret. And it was some of the best acting that he did. You know what I mean? I'm like, this was just to get a performance out of him, or else logically she would have known first.
Well, like, and so they want to have that scene where he breaks the news to her, but doesn't want to tell her, which is just so weird. It's her body. It's her, like, why wouldn't she know? Like, she wouldn't know that she's sick. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
But even like her death made no sense because she was like lying there.
Fine.
She looked fine. He went to go hug her and everything. And then he walks out of the room the exact same night, walks out of the room, goes to her dad, and then he just nods. And I'm like, wow, I felt like nothing. I'm like, okay, she's obviously dead because I don't know. There was no emotional tie for me. And I think the issue with this is that you knew she was going to die from the beginning of the film.
Yeah, that's true. So, I did know that.
You know what I mean? So it's like, if they did not put that at the beginning, it would have been 10 times more effective when it did happen, because their love story wasn't anything great in my opinion. It wasn't like, oh my God, love struck in this. Like I felt nothing, Rachel. I was like, okay, when's the real stuff coming? Like there was nothing for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, also, I guess I was reading and they debated, I guess originally she started as a Jewish girl and then they kind of changed her. So it's Catholic girl. Okay. And I think that it doesn't make any sense that this father would be like, I'm going to disinherit you because you married a girl from Radcliffe that goes to Radcliffe that's white, that like, I mean, there's no reason. I mean,
no sense.
What?
But he was also so angry at his father for like why are you mad?
Like, if she was Jewish, obviously that would be a bad thing that he wouldn't want, that he had anti-Semitic, but at least it would be sensical.
Yeah.
Like, it would make sense for his character to be this just was like, there is no reason that the dad would be against him marrying, like, just because it was a little fast. Like, there's no way that he would disavow his son for marrying.
Doesn't make sense, because it's also like rich versus poor, and then when that was tied into it, I'm like, who's writing this screenplay?
She like, literally is going to a preppy. She's going to Radcliffe. She's going to right.
I'm like, how poor education? They're at the same school. I don't get it.
They're
like
all in New England. It's not like she's going to the community college and he's like slumming it. Like,
yeah. I was just like, but why do I care? I just don't understand why they're like getting mad. Why this one's like, I'm against my father. I don't love my dad and this. I'm just like, but your dad's supporting you. I don't understand why you're against your own father. He even showed up to your bloody hockey game and you treat him like it just didn't make any sense other than the fact that like he's rich and he owns like one of the hulls. Like it was just weird.
I think what's interesting about this movie is if you look at it in terms of context, because during the late 70s, early 80s, there were lots of female empowerment pictures, and most of them were about women leaving the men in their lives for careers or other things, unmarried woman, Kramer versus Kramer, some of these other movies, Annie Hall, things like that, and I found this quote by Eric Siegel who wrote it. He said that he thought it was success because it deals with today's personal commitment of one-to-one and the quest for a permanent relationship, which begins much younger than it used to. The old mindless football game dating is gone. The question of sexual morality is irrelevant, but there is much less swinging among young people now than in the old days, which I think is interesting because we don't think of that time period in that way.
No.
But I kind of wonder if in the world of movies, at least, and television shows, there were a lot at that time of these kind of women leaving their families, leaving their loves for career and other things that this is why something like this, which is so sentimental and about this love story, kind of thing, if that's why it did so well and took off so much.
I know. I just with the way that she was written, I could see that they wanted to have that like female empowerment. I get it that she was quippy, that she was, in his face, that she challenged him, and I liked that. But at the same time, like,
but I also could see how it would be sort of the opposite of these female empowerment characters. Somebody like, if you look at Meryl Streep's character in Kramer versus Kramer, she is the villain in that movie. Yeah. And you could say she doesn't deserve to be, but nevertheless, and that's how she is portrayed. She is leaving her family. She is abandoning her child. And so she's the villain. And I think that in some ways, this is like, she does have some modern, attributes, just enough. But for the most part, she's a pretty traditional character. And this is a pretty traditional boy meets girl. They fall in love, they get married, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think that's why I didn't feel like it was anything grand or like challenging, because it felt very like by the book, them meeting, going for coffee, doing like, it was just like the proper steps where I didn't think anything of her character. Like I felt like she was very like one note for me, where she's kind of a forgettable character in my opinion. I don't think that she did anything for the film other than to kind of show Ryan O'Neal's character, like him being rich and him being like this and him, being the preppy. It was like in service of his character. So I don't think that she had any sort of identity without him, if that makes any sense. Because she did have her own dreams, which I like her deathbed. She does say like, don't feel bad for taking, not kind of like my life away, but like I chose you type of thing. But that's the only thing that she has, is that she chose him. She doesn't have a life of her own. So when you do look at like, like female liberation and like other stories that do counter that, she has none of that and is like basically one note, as I said. So it's very different for the time, especially it came out in 1970, as like we've been saying. So it's weird how it worked out.
But I wonder if that was kind of the appeal of this kind of just really wholesome,
like a return to form.
Hey, this is David from the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. For over 4 years, each week, a guest and I take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies we think were either an influence or connect in some other way. It's a fun, unique way to discuss films that leads to a great list of other movies to check out that either explore the same themes and ideas or maybe utilize similar filmmaking techniques. Including special episodes in our side series that twist the format, we've done over 200 episodes, so there's bound to be one on a film you've been thinking about and want to dig deeper into. So check us out on all the major podcasting apps and at piecingpod.com.
Talk about the big quote that they have here, the big tagline, the love means never having to say you're sorry. And so the director, he's asked about this. Arthur Hiller, and he said that he says, think about it. All it says is that if you love somebody, you understand they're not perfect and they don't have to apologize for every little thing they do that isn't perfect. It's an affirmation of the human spirit. So
I think that's a stretch.
What do you think about that?
I think that's a stretch. I think it's a very much a stretch. I think that if people are so focused on being loved and being in love, they need to be able to communicate how to love to their partners. And that does mean having to say you're sorry and also working through certain issues, because not everything is like roses and rainbows 24/7. Like, they got into some pretty like heated arguments, and the one where I was in complete shock with is when she was on the phone with his dad and said, like, your son, he may not say it, but he really loves you so much. And then he was like, get out of my house, like, get out of my life. And I'm just like, you have to say sorry in that case, because you're literally saying, like, get out of my life. Meanwhile, you married this girl. She has to be in, like, she is in your life in every single aspect. So you can't just say that. But then that also ties into them being naive at the age that they were, getting married at like 24, 25, where you're going to like lose your cool sometimes. But it leads to that line being said for the first time in the film, and her crying, I lost the key, I couldn't come back and all of that. And then she says like the line, and it's like, it doesn't do anything in that case, because he said something that was incredibly hurtful. You can't just forgive someone for saying that, in my like opinion. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, and the thing is, if you're going to say, okay, there's like apology with like a capital A, and then like what we all think of like this, that like basically he's saying in this quote is that like, you don't have to apologize for being flawed, for being a human being. And yeah, okay, fine. But that's really not that insightful. All right. And then especially when he says it at the end to his dad, because his dad says, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, love means you don't have to say you're sorry. And it's like, in this case, he needed to say he was sorry.
He did.
He had done something bad. And he needed to say he was sorry, and he needed to vocalize that. Like one of the worst things that you can do as a human is keeping everything all inside. Like, yes, you can overdo it and over vocalize, but we need to communicate how we're feeling.
Yeah, 100%. You can't just like, if it's strictly about flaws, obviously, like, you can acknowledge your flaws, but when you do something wrong in a situation, like, you have to apologize for it. I'm sorry. Like, it has nothing to do with your flaws. Like, if you like fly off the handle or you say something incredibly rude to someone, like, you do have to like apologize. Like, that has nothing to do with your flaws or your personality whatsoever.
Yeah. And I do agree that if you cannot have a relationship if you are constantly worried about the stability of the relationship. Like, if you are worried, if I admit this is wrong, he's going to leave me or he doesn't love me, that's not a relationship. That's not love. Right. And so in that sense, yes, like there has to be like a certain degree of sort of emotional acceptance and love.
Yeah.
In order for it to work. Like, duh.
Like,
But
not like love, you know what I mean? You can't, you have to say, you don't have to say sorry. It's like, okay.
but you absolutely do have to say you're sorry a lot and frequently. Humility is a really important part of love.
100%.
And I mean, what's the scripture where they talk about love is long suffering, kind, patient? That's love.
Mm-hmm.
It's not being and maybe that's what they're trying to say of like you were long suffering, you just accept imperfections. But I think there is power in vocalization, in actually saying the words I'm sorry.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really important in any relationship to have the emotional, intelligent conversations and just acknowledging that you were wrong in certain situations. You have to in order to move forward, because there are things that we're all human. And I guess that's what the quote is alluding to as to what he said. And you just have to be able to sit there and work through certain situations instead of hiding away or running away. You just have to confront it.
Yeah. The other problem is just inherent in the screenplay that I think is a weakness is that for the most part, like I was relatively enjoying it when it's sort of the back and forth and them getting together and them like standing up to their parents. It's like that stuff was fun. But it just everything once the whole sickness thing, it just feels so tagged on. And again, she doesn't even look sick. There's no signs that it's just so, it feels like they didn't know how to end the movie. And so they're like, okay, let's have her die.
It's true. Cause even they went skating.
Feels really rushed.
It does. And it's like, it felt like the longest movie ever too. While I was watching, I'm like, they're still doing random things with each other. The worst part, I think, where I was like, I was checked out, I swear to you, was when she was watching him skate and then she sat across the table and she grabbed his hand and he's like, do you want to know where I want to go next? And then he's like, where? I'll take you anywhere. And then she goes, the hospital. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you just literally said the hospital, fam. Like, you look completely fine sitting outside. You weren't coughing. You weren't like falling over.
Bad. She looks fine.
As I was saying, I was like, you walked her there. She what, like, you know what I mean? She didn't feel weak. You walked her to the hospital. Sorry, I'm my mic. But you walked her to the hospital.
Yeah, like at least in A Walk to Remember, she looks like frail and white and pale, and like she looks sick. She looks like she's gonna die.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think it was just for performance wise and trying to pull the better performance from either one of them with this ending, because you're right, Rachel. I don't think they even knew what they were going to do with this other than like insert that really dumb tagline to try to get some sort of emotion from the father and like him after she passes. Like, I don't understand why that was even said towards the dad either. Like, it just didn't make any sense if that was being said within a relationship. It just wasn't as effective at the end either. So him sitting on the bench at the end of the movie, and I'm like, wow, you guys did a bookend in the exact
their bench.
It's their bench. I'm like, whoa, okay. I'm like, I get it, but oh my god.
Yeah. I did think there's when he says it's not your fault. Because he is sort of blaming himself. That was a pretty good moment. And
I agree. But even then she got really mad at him. She's like, you should just go if you're gonna be like this at my deathbed. I'm like, okay.
She says screw Paris and music and all the things you thought you stole from me.
Yeah, and I was like, that's so okay. Don't be harsh. You're dying. Why are you yelling at him? I was like, what is this? Because she was really harsh. It wasn't like, like playful at the end. I was just like, why are you being so mean? Like, oh my god, don't you love this man? Like, there was nothing coming off of her. I was like, okay.
Yeah. It was too funny how how much they tried to make him be like, he's like the cool Harvard guy. He's like, he's a hockey player and he like gets blood on his face and he's like, I don't know.
He wasn't
Like,
even that cool.
somehow they managed
like-
him being the cool, tough, rugged hockey player, rebellious, who stands up against his parents, but he's also like the preppy Harvard law student. Like they
You can't be all of that at once, fam.
all
I don't
of
care what guy you're trying to write here. Like, it doesn't, like, choose a lane, please. You can't do it. You can't. I think the highlight for me was seeing a very young Tommy Lee Jones, because I just did not expect to see him in a movie like this. So,
Yeah,
like, damn.
that's true.
Right? That's twice now. We did JFK. We did Love Story. We're like, okay, we're having a Tommy Lee Jones marathon in secret, apparently.
Yeah. So there we go. That is Love Story.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
I asked on Twitter what people thought. Got a barrage of responses. Our friend Molly, she just wrote bad.
Oh my gosh, she agrees with us. Yes. Thank
bad.
God.
My friend Terry, she says, as kids, we'd watch this all the time, which is pretty steamy for like little kids. Like that's a pretty steamy scene.
That's wild.
That's funny to me. As kids, we'd watch this all the time on TV and just cry. I remember really liking it because I love me some melodrama. Haven't seen it in forever, so I don't know if it holds up. And my friend Georgia, she says, OMG, I love to make fun of this movie. It's so unrealistic.
Oh my God. It's true.
Susan she says, of course it made me cry, but later I realized what a horrible belief her statement, love means never having to say you're sorry, is.
Yeah.
AG House says, to me, it feels very basic and, to be frank, boring. That's not entirely the movie's fault, but it's such a well-worn story and the movie doesn't do anything unique with it.
It's true.
Yeah.
I agree with that one too.
My friend The Wiz says, I am stunned by how bad this is. Yeah.
Like, I can't. I can't.
The girly nerd says it has its nice moments, but the melodrama is a bit much and it feels dated. I also think its famous line rings absolutely false. If you truly love someone, apologize. I always thought that was such an odd line. I mean, the musical theme is gorgeous, though.
It is. It's true. I just don't want to hear it on loop.
Yeah, Mary says, it was a huge hit in my day. Watched it once, never again. Movies that make you sob.
It's true. It's true.
So in What's Up, Doc? Have you ever seen What's Up, Doc?
I haven't actually, no.
So good. That's one of my favorite comedies of all time. Barbara Streisand. It has Peter O'Neill, and there's a scene in there where he says that or someone says the sorry line, and then he says, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
There you go.
I love
it's a
that.
great movie. Carlos says, I saw it for the first time a couple of years ago and really liked it. And then Virginia Pronom says, I saw it once, kind of a long time ago, and remember finding it a bit boring.
Fair.
And Jacob says, it's very melodramatic and I don't think has aged well. And then so that is the comments. We all agree. And I love me some melodrama. I love like movies that are kind of over the top with their emotions and try to, when it's done well, but it's very difficult to pull off. I like it. People say just use sort of, it's like a soap opera as like an inherent bad thing, but that's not the case for me. Like I enjoy.
No, it's fun. Yeah, it's fun.
When
it's different.
When it's done well. But in this case, it's just not great.
No.
So, but way to go and them making like they probably never had to work again.
I know.
I mean,
like
that's a lot of money. So,
that's so much, especially for back then to make that bank. Like I
Yeah.
think everyone and their mother went to that movie.
yeah, it's so bonkers to me how scared Hollywood is of romances, because when they're super cheap to make for the most
Mhm.
part. They're super
Yeah.
cheap to make, and when they score.
It's true.
They make so much money. So to
It's
me,
true.
it's like bonkers that every year we don't have like sort of we have, 25 cheap horror movies that come out every year,
Yeah.
that we don't have that unless you're including TV movies for
Mm-hmm.
romances, that they stopped making them for like 15 years because there's been, I mean, you look at Pretty Woman, how much money that movie made. It's insane.
It's
And,
because you had like a star in, Richard Gere, and you had the stars in Julia Roberts. And I think that what we're missing is to have those well-known actors in romance films to drive them to the theater. I think that's like, no one wants to sign up for a rom-com anymore. And it sucks
Yeah.
that happened. That's why, like, even with Anyone But You,
Yeah.
whether you liked it or you
Yeah.
didn't, it's the fact that like they really brought back
yeah.
people to theaters to watch something like
Yeah.
that.
And that's why it had such legs, is people like going to romances. People like
They're
seeing,
fun.
even if it's flawed, even if it's not
Yeah.
perfect, people like going to rom-coms.
They do.
It's really true. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of glad, as somebody who's in the romance space, that I feel like this is one now I've checked it off the list. I've seen it.
Same. And
You know?
we never have to watch it again, Rachel.
Never
It's
have to watch it
done.
again.
We never have to hear the score again. We're good.
Yes. Well, let us know, if you're listening, what you think of Love Story. If you think we're too tough on it, then let us know, and we want to hear what you think. And I'll put a link. I haven't written up my review yet. I wanted to wait until after I finish this. But I'll write up my review for my blog. I do Blind Spot series over there, so check that out. And Amanda, where can people find you?
Yeah, you guys can always follow me over at AMX NDA Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can check out my website, candidxcinema.com, and my YouTube, Candid Cinema.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following Hallmarkies podcast all over the place. And we cover all things romance over there. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us out a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much. And we also have the Patreon group, which is a lot of fun, and the merch store. So check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.